Me 27F and husband 32M, less than 2 years married, need help. Seeking advice. I don't know if I, 27F, should leave my husband, 32M. Backstory. I married him because he was so calm, a great listener, and made me feel seen, heard, and validated. But that changed quickly after we got married. We courted for about 9 months before tying the knot, and while there were arguments before marriage, this situation feels different. For context, we both come from broken homes, each with its own set of childhood traumas that shaped our coping mechanisms. We are the classic avoidant versus anxious attachment types, and while that doesn't help, I don't think it's the root of the issue. We've actually improved at accommodating each other's attachment styles. For example, while he still detaches at times, he doesn't run off as much and has become more open about what's going on. I've also learned to respect his space more, not following him around as much. A bit more context. We share similar family values and life goals. We both want a more traditional household where he provides and I raise the kids. The problem is, he hasn't had a stable job since he quit his 9 to 5 a few months into us courting. He called me that day to ask if it was okay, and although I was hesitant, I didn't want him stuck in a job he hated. After we married, he worked at a friend's pizza shop, and though the hours were long and exhausting, he at least helped with the mortgage and utilities. Then, he decided to start his own detailing business and asked me to cover the full mortgage while he paid utilities. I agreed and supported him. I even let him use all the wedding gift money to pay off his over $30,000 in credit card debt. He was able to cut it in half through negotiations, but he still has about $3,000 to $4,000 remaining, which he's paying $200 per month toward. His business initially did well but has since slowed down, and now he makes around $500 per month from helping his dad and the few details he gets. I try to be patient and supportive, even though I'm under enormous pressure at work. With possible layoffs coming, I worry if I lose my job, we won't be able to survive much longer. I know this is affecting him too, and he feels like a failure for not being able to provide. This is the main issue preventing us from having kids. I'm almost 28, so while there's still time, the clock is ticking. If finances weren't an issue, I'd already have kids by now. We agreed on a 3-year timeline for kids when we married, but we're nearing 2 years, and our finances are only getting worse. Our hopes are fading, and optimism is dwindling. But finances aren't the real issue. The real issue is that, in almost 2 years of marriage, he's planned one date. Just one. I've made it clear that I don't need fancy outings. He knows I love nature. Hiking and camping were things I did a lot before we married, and he said he loved them too. But he hasn't once planned a walk, a hike, or a camping trip. I've told him it doesn't have to cost anything. We have all the gear, and I can use my car and gas. We live near several parks and trails that are free to visit. Nothing. I even bought board games for us to play together, but he's never suggested playing any. On top of that, he lies. Before we got married, he was vaping. I'd quit 2 years prior, and I told him it was something he needed to work on, especially the lying about it. He promised he wouldn't lie, but when I saw his friends post about him vaping, I asked him about it. He denied it. That should have been a red flag, but it wasn't. Since then, he's lied to me about vaping 4 more times. Once, I found vapes while reorganizing. He swore they were old. A month later, I saw him vaping again and confronted him. He denied it, claiming the vapor was just the sun shining through the window. I made him come over and look at it, and only then did he admit it. That moment shattered something in me. The gaslighting and lies have continued since then, and I don't know how much longer I can endure it. We had a conversation with his best friend, whom we both agreed would be helpful in resolving conflicts. His friend and I spoke for hours, and we decided my husband and I needed to sit down and discuss our expectations. We tried. I took notes. He never looked at them. A few weeks later, we had another fight, and he took some notes again. I'm not sure if he ever looked at them. I feel like I'm repeating myself constantly, but nothing changes. It's hard to leave because not everything is bad. I know he doesn't intentionally try to hurt me, but at what point do I stop supporting this? Supporting him financially is one thing, but the lying and gaslighting, the lack of effort to take me out, he does handle all the housework. So there's that, but I feel like a roommate, not a wife. We tried weekly meetings early in our marriage, but after a few, I stopped initiating because I could tell he wasn't interested. About 6 months ago, he had a breakthrough and realized how much his childhood was affecting him. He said we should start the meetings again, but he hasn't initiated a single one. No dates, no meetings. He says he's trying, and I believe he thinks he is, but he's not acting. He's not doing things. He's told me that maybe we're not compatible, but I know this isn't about compatibility. Who would be compatible with someone who lies, gaslights, doesn't follow through on promises, and then gets depressed about being a failure? I love him, and I care about him, but I'm running out of patience. The fact that I've been so patient might just be enabling him, making him think I'll never leave. But I don't want to leave. I don't want a divorce to be the wake-up call he needs. I want him to wake up on his own. I want my patience to be rewarded. Right now, I feel like I'm grieving the marriage I almost had. Another problem, sex. When we first married, we had sex about once a week. After big fights, it would be every other week. But I was always the major initiator, and that really hurt me. He has issues with premature ejaculation, but I thought it was improving as we kept having sex. However, as I became more exhausted from all the lies, the gaslighting, and the lack of emotional or physical care, I started matching his effort. Sex became less frequent. I begged him to research ways to help with his issue. I even bought toys to help, but he refused, claiming he didn't want ads to pop up. It was his ego, not my needs, that mattered to him. Eventually, I caved and bought pills, and we had a few good sessions, but because I wasn't initiating anymore, it became even less frequent. Most recently, after a bad fight where he flung a chair and stormed off, we haven't had sex or even slept in the same bed. He hasn't slept in my bed for a while, alternating between fights, his snoring, staying up late, or being sick. But now, I don't even want him back in my bed until he gets his act together, stops lying, stops gaslighting, and starts treating me like his wife, not his brother. He apologizes, usually the morning after, but his apologies don't hold much weight anymore because it's the same thing over and over again. I've scheduled couples therapy through work, 8 free sessions a year. I'm thinking we need to go weekly or bi-weekly instead of once every 6 weeks, but at this point, I don't know if it will even help. To make matters worse, I have no support system. My mom is overseas and mentally unwell, and my dad is emotionally distant and never fully approved of him. I'm trying to juggle housework and the animals on my own, and we bought a fixer-upper, but money for materials is limited. My husband knows how to do most of the work, but it's hard with limited resources. Am I delusional? Is there hope? He's not a bad person. He needs help. All I'm asking for is honesty and kindness. I understand his childhood shaped him, but this isn't the way to go about it. What would you do? Quick edit. I know I have issues too, and I try to recognize and communicate them. But without sitting down and communicating together, how can I? I'm using all my energy just to stay sane, crying almost every day. I have no room to sympathize with him anymore. Him hearing it from a therapist is my last hope. I've read and heard about countless marriages that make it through tough times, so it's still early for me, and I hold on to hope. But if I'm being honest, that hope is dwindling. TLDR, I, 27F, am questioning whether I should leave my husband, 32M, due to several issues in our marriage. Despite coming from similar backgrounds, my husband has struggled with job instability, financial problems, and a lack of effort in our relationship. He hasn't planned any dates, and the emotional support is minimal. He also frequently lies, especially about vaping, which has been a major issue. I feel more like a roommate than a wife, and the constant disappointment is emotionally draining. We both want kids, but our financial and emotional struggles have put that plan on hold. Our first couples therapy session is scheduled for a few days, but I'm not sure it will help, and my hope is fading. I'm torn between being patient and realizing I might be enabling his behavior. On the positive side, he cares for me deeply, takes care of major emergencies, does most of the housework, and is not abusive. He seems sincere in his apologies and genuinely feels like he's failing me. He's not narcissistic, but he definitely needs help,